so many emotions going through my body right now. Thank you so much, Nicole, for that wonderful testimonial and just who and what you are and what Unity on the Bay is, has been, and forever will be. So, one thing I usually like to say every week, that God is good. And all the time, God is good. Yes, God is good. I think I shared a little story earlier about Nicole when she came to San Francisco to give her presentation, or her performance. And I was, of course, live in Sacramento, which is about an hour and a half away. And I don't necessarily travel that far to go see anybody. I might go to see John Legend, and then they said, okay, Nicole's going to be there. I will be there. I just came. I didn't let her know I was coming. I was sitting in the audience just enjoying her magnificent show, as she always puts on a first-rate presentation every single time. No question about it. And she was out there, I think, after it was over. She was talking to some very important people. And I was kind of standing on the sideline, waiting to say my piece to her. And she didn't know I was there. She didn't know it was me. And I was like all up in her space. And she probably, in her mind, thinking, who is this person to my right that, all up in my space like this? So finally I had a little opening. And I shared Nicole. It was a wonderful show tonight. At first she didn't recognize who I was, because he had probably a cognitive dissonance, because she used to see me here in Miami. But we made that connection immediately, and it was magnificent. So thank you. I think of you and also everyone here often. And for those who I have not seen in a while, we'll always be connected. And for those who are not, I don't know, because you're part of Unity on the Bay, we're connected too. So thank you so much for showing up today. Well, Juan was telling me about the theme of the day, or the topic of the day for our Unity Day, and it was about Ubuntu, and I was thinking about a story I'd run across a while back. And in South Africa, there's a group of people called Xhosa. It's a tribe there. And there was an anthropologist who had went to go visit this group of people, very wonderful people. And one day he decided to play a game, and he put a basket of fruit near a tree. And he wanted the little kids that were there to run to the tree. And he said the first person who got there would get all of the fruit. So he set the basket down, and he said to those kids, ready, set, go. And most of us would think that they would have been sprinting to the tree with all their speed. But they did something very different. They simply held hands. And they walked to the tree in unison. And the man was kind of like perplexed, and he was laughing and said, did y'all know what I was trying to tell you? Did you not understand the assignment? The first one that gets there gets all the fruit that's by the tree. But all the kids simply responded and said in unison, Ubuntu. And it says essentially that how can one of us be happy if the rest of us are miserable? They understood. They understood the real assignment. And Ubuntu can be summed up by the phrase, I am because you are because we are. And Ubuntu was a central philosophy by Nelson Mandela in his life and in his work. And he believed it was the key to building a more just and equitable society. In his autobiography, A Long Walk to Freedom, he wrote, Ubuntu is the essence of being human. And I would go so far to say that it is really Spirit's master plan for humanity, for all of us in some way, shape, or form. There's a song by a jazz musician that was been around years ago, and my father was a jazz aficionado. He had so many jazz albums from some of the greats, and my aunt was also a musician that played piano. But I remember when I was in college, we used to play this song from Pharoah Sanders, The Creator Has a Master Plan. And it has a line in there that says, the Creator has a master plan, happiness for every man. The Creator has a master plan, peace and love in all the land. Now, I can't sing as good as Nicole. Indeed, the Creator has a master plan. Now, we may not see it. We may not believe it because we may be not vibrating on the level of the consciousness of what this divine plan is for each and every one of us. But there's a basic text that we know in Unity that's foundational to our teachings, written by Emily Cady. And she writes on page 157 of the chapter, The Unity in Spirit, that if we did not know it as a reality, that behind a multitude and variety of our human experiences, as you talk about the wars, the rumors of war, the polarizations that we see in politics, that behind all of that, there is a mastermind that sees the end from the beginning. And if we do not know it, we will become discouraged. I think I have to think about that when we see stuff going on in the world, in our life, that yes, there's a master plan behind the pictures that we see. There's always some unfolding good that we may not be able to see with our human eyes, but from that third dimension, that fourth dimensional space, there is something that's unfolding. So we want to remember that there is a plan, there is a blueprint, there is a vision waiting to catch our attention. And it's simply waiting for a vibration to come through us that's big enough, bold enough, courageous enough to be the expression of it. And I think for us to recognize that master plan, we have to get a glimpse of it. We must have an evolution or maybe even a revolution of values, so much that's needed in our world today. And this evolution or transformation is really taking place, even though we may not recognize it at times. But it simply means we're moving through this stage, this hierarchy of values, where we're becoming aware that we started out maybe as with natural values. Those who studied, I don't know what that field is, what Darwin was in, the natural, the survival of the fittest, and, how we were organisms, and we had to struggle against one another just for limited resources, and only the strongest, the most robust, the most adaptable will emerge victorious. And that at one stage, the values is what we live by that. But we are unfinished beings. Spirit is always working through and as us. We're very young in this thing called life. So we're moving beyond mere survival to another stage. Maybe we had moved to a stage of what I call hedonistic values. Now, I know about hedonistic values. Basically says if it feels good, do it. Now, you may remember those days. I was in Miami during some of those crazy days. I think they're still going on in some respects. Some of you will understand what I'm talking about. We say, if it feels good, do it. There was a song, I think, by BT Express back in the old days. They said, do it. Do it till you're satisfied. Whatever it is. But we know that sometimes when we do these things that seemingly give us temporary satisfaction, what follows that is dissatisfaction. It can never fulfill us spiritually. So back in the day, those were some of the values that maybe were running amok in our life. That whenever we live from those so-called hedonistic values, we ride along this roller coaster of life, ups and downs, and we're never really at peace. We're never really at one with ourselves. And then we may move to something more, maybe materialistic values, where we know it's about getting as much as we want or desire, the hoarding, accumulating. Sometimes people do it at other people's expense. And then there are humanistic values. Maybe it's a little bit more than that. And we try to be successful in the world. We want to be liked, and that's okay. It's part of our journey. And then maybe we got caught up and became involved in some religion, and we got involved in religious values. And I'm speaking about religious values. I'm thinking about religiosity. Individuals are trying to do the right thing to get a blessing from God. We study the 10 Commandments. We move through life trying not to make too many mistakes because we know, according to this God that people were telling us, if we made too many, well, at the end of your life, you're going to go to a place you're not going to like. But we know that there is no God like that. Because God is the same yesterday, today, and forever, and God is absolute love. So, if God is all that there is, and God is all that there is, and if God is love, and yes, God is love, then there's no room for anything other than the loving presence and the power and the love of God. And God does not change up on us. It's not one thing today and something else tomorrow. It is always being itself. So we're not here to get something from God. We're not here to get God to do something for us. We're here to be available to what God is doing, to jointly participate in the good that God has everywhere. But there's always something even more than what we learn in our religions. We would call that the spiritual values. Spiritual values means that we're in alignment with this power. We're in alignment with this love. This is where we begin to see that master plan that Pharaoh Sanders sang about, where we learn to move from competition to cooperation so we can continue to co-evolve in the world in which we live. Here's a story about a teacher. And the teacher had brought some balloons to the school, and the teacher asked for all of the kids to blow up each of the balloons and on the balloons to write their name on it. And then the teacher took all of the balloons and tossed the balloons in the hallway and mixed them all up, and from one end of the hallway to the other end of the hallway. And then the teacher gave all of the students like 5 minutes to find the balloon with their name on it. And the kids ran around looking frantically, but time ran out. And nobody was able to find their own balloon because there were so many of them. And then the teacher told them to take the balloon that was closest to them and give it to the person whose name was on it. And in less than 2 minutes, everyone had their own balloon. And the preacher said something to the effect that balloons are like happiness. No one will find it looking for theirs alone. Instead, if everyone cares about each other's, they will find theirs as quickly as possible. I think that's one of the principles of Ubuntu that we're talking about today, the idea that we all do better when we all do better. On a small scale, it's really that value in action. And the recognition that we all do well when we all do well. So we can affirm together with ourselves, I am because you are. Let's just say that together. I am because you are. You are because we are. Let's say it together. You are because we are. This is the evolutionary jump that we must take if we are to avail ourselves to the Creator's master plan for humanity. Which means that we must question some of the basic assumptions and tenets of many of the economic, the political, and social ways of being in the world. Meaning, there must be a willingness to share which will replace greed. Peaceful coexistence will be valued over violence. Individual self-importance will be transformed into being the humble realization that our ability to truly thrive depends on adhering to values that sustain life itself. Now, it doesn't mean that we are not going to be individuals carrying out our own individual talents and reasons that we're being here. That's never going to disappear. Our individuality is important. We will always continue to be the unique, unrepeatable expressions of God that we are. But what we will do, we will restore the balance in which our own self-interest will be negotiated with the greater interests of the communities in which we live. So the next step of our evolution will be cooperative synergy over mere competitive exploitation. And I was reading a story about a chief executive officer of a company, and he actually worked in Seattle. His company's in Seattle, and he did some processing of credit cards, and he made a decision that he was going to have everybody in his company make at least $70,000. And so he cut his vast salary to help with this vision. And some of the people, hailed him as a hero, but other people who were looking at him like, this dude is out here mind. He's going to be in bankruptcy before you know it. But that's not what happened. Instead, the company thrived. It almost doubled the number of employees. It tripled the growth of the company. It led to fiercely loyal employees, and the turnover rate was basically non-existent. So their knowledge of how to help their company skyrocketed as they helped their customers more and more, and many of the people just stayed on for a longer period of time than normal. This individual went against the grain of what was expected from someone leading an organization or a business. And of course, like many companies that went through the pandemic a few years ago, it lost half of its business. But it bounced back after its employees voluntarily took pay cuts and did all they could to bring back the company. And they not only got the money back, but they got even more after it was all said and done. Now, probably many in the world are not ready for this kind of way of being. But this particular business leader recognized that we all do better when we all do better. And along the way, Dan Price was his name, transformed his own values. And that included being of service to a spiritual idea. I think for us to rise above, to transcend the human predicament, and to capture the master plan, we must embody a value system that says not only we're here to succeed on a materialistic level, but we're here to be of service to a spiritual idea. I shared earlier that I had never in my life imagined myself being a minister. I was too cool for that. But, I went through my own dark night of the soul, and, I ended up at Unity on the Bay, and I was going through my rehab from, drugs and alcohol, and I had a roommate who said, go to this place called Unity. And I asked him, I said, what is that? Is that like a church? He said, kind of, sort of. And I told him, well, I don't do church. But he bugged me so much that I said, okay, if you don't bother me anymore, I'll go this one time. And so I came that one time, and I sat in the corner in the back just in case I needed to get out of there real quick. And the minister said something I didn't like. And needless to say, the minister, it was Reverend Bill Cameron at the time. Many of you know him. My number one mentor in my life, he's still in my head today. And I could swear that someone had given Reverend Cameron my personal file. I just know that he had prepared his lesson for that week just from the information in my life, because he was talking directly to me. I knew that for a fact. And I said, who am I going to have to sue for violating my rights like that? But eventually, I got on this track of realizing that this is something I could do in life, to be of service to a spiritual idea. I think this is the new definition of success, and it may take different types of forms. I think to be of service to a spiritual idea, what's involved in that idea is abundance and prosperity. What's involved in that idea is unbounded energy and vitality and vigor and transforming knowledge. It's divine wisdom and compassion, the ability to forgive ourselves and others and to see things aright from that highest point of view, and to be the finely tuned instruments of the Spirit of God, of love, of peace, of wholeness, to demonstrate heaven on earth. That is why we are here. That is why we are here. So thinking back to that song from Pharoah Sanders, the Creator has a master plan. Realizing the Creator, God, the divine, I like to call it the force, gives us a glimpse of what that master plan is all about. Sometimes it's through other creations and other creatures that inhabit the planet. Can we get that video? That picture up here? There you go. Okay. Now, let me tell you what this is. There's 12 ants up here, and they're around a little bit of water, and they're on a leaf. And they're all gathered there to try to drink that water. What's amazing about this, the ants have divided themselves into 4 groups. And the reason for the 4 groups is that they need to maintain the balance of the water, the drop of water, and keep it from tilting and all the water just falling to the ground. In many respects, nature is demonstrating a master plan for the ants to cooperate and to divide that water amongst themselves so that every one of them benefits. Thank you for the demonstration there. Okay. Anyway, the ants, this is the ants' way of showing us how we all do better when we all do better. You know, there's been a lot of stuff talk about, in politics these days, and people bringing up people's names like Abraham Lincoln and so forth in interesting ways. But I was, I read a lot about history. I love history. And Lincoln, after the Civil War, practiced the words malice toward none and charity for all. And at the time the Confederacy was defeated, he didn't want to inflict any more pain on the South or humiliate them. And he went to the soldiers, those who opposed him, those who saw him as their enemy. And he comforted those wounded rebels and visited their grave sites of those who had died. And he told the army of leaders to let them go home, give them horses to plow their fields, their guns to hunt for their food, to help them do better, to help them be better. And on some level, I think he knew that we all do well when we all do well. I think this is the spiritual values that are about when we talk about Ubuntu, the concepts of spirituality. There are values of universal love and mutual benefit. Is to regard other people's countries as our own, to regard other people's families as our own, to regard other people's persons as our own. When all the people in the world, beginning with each and every one of us right here, right now, love one another on that level, the strong will not overcome the weak. The many will not oppress the few, in so many words. The well-to-do will not insult those who are not. The honored will not despise the humble, and the cunning will not deceive the seeming ignorant, those who just don't know. Because of the spiritual value of Ubuntu, of universal love, all the calamities, the hatred, the animosity in the world will not arise, because we will know without a doubt we all do better when we all do better. Let's pray together for a moment. Let us connect with this presence and realize that there's one presence, one power, one reality. And we are part of this one presence. And this one presence is known by many different names. We may call it God. We may call it the Atman presence, the Buddhic field, closer than breathing, nearer than hands and feet. But one thing that we know, we call it forth as an activity of our awareness, our consciousness. So the thoughts that we have, the words that we speak, the actions that we take are in alignment with all the qualities of God itself. First and foremost, divine and perfect love, the thing that binds us all together, and all of its offspring. It may be that peace that passes all understanding. It may be that joy that is without bounds. It may be that health, that wholeness, that vitality, that vigor. But we are part of that because we are part of the presence and the power of God. We come from that. We are connected, interconnected with that on a soul level with each other. And as we begin to come from this consciousness, this way of being in the world, there is no problem that we cannot overcome. There is not a vision that we cannot reach. There is not anything that we cannot achieve, because with God, we know that all things are possible, and we come from that presence of God. We are the expressions of God. God needs us. We are the way that God gets around in this dimension, and we are grateful and thankful that we can come forth to anchor all of these qualities in every aspect of our life and in our world, and we will uplift not only ourselves, but the very planet in which we live. God needs us, and we shine that light where it appears to be darkness. We lift up another individual, and as we lift up another individual, not only are they benefited, but we all are lifted up, because we all do better when we all do better. Peace and blessings to you.